Hello and welcome to Arsenal Domination, where tomorrow is, of course, the Carabao Cup final. And this is such a big game for Arsenal that I thought it was worth spending a minute or two, longer than I usually do, doing a preview for the show. But if you are interested in the shorter format of it, there will be a video out tomorrow in shorter form running you through the main prescient even details of the game. So I spoke yesterday or earlier today, about the importance of this game from both an Arsenal and Manchester City perspective. It's the first chance for major significant silverware this season, and Arsenal have gone 6 years without it. The narrative is that we aren't good enough to get things over the line. We don't have the mentality to get it over the line, despite having the quality, and that you can understand that narrative. But this is a chance for Arsenal to change that narrative, and I think they really are in a position where they can do that in a way that they haven't necessarily been in years gone by. For Manchester City, conversely, we know how good they are, but they have had a difficult couple of seasons. They were trophyless last season. Pep counts a Community Shield. You can or can't count that, depending on your personal view. But they are currently trophyless this season, and in some difficulty in terms of how they're going to win. They're out of the Champions League. The league by no means is over, but they are got a mountain to climb to catch back up a little bit, and that puts extra pressure on the domestic cups. And we know that one poor performance from any side can see you going out of a cup competition. So there will be considerable pressure on them as well as us going into this game. And just very quickly on City, they have really had a difficult time lately. Their recent results, it's one win in the last five in all competitions. They are going to be without Mark Gehi for this one. He's ineligible. And of course, for Gavardiol, of course, as well, is injured. And they do really, really struggle on the transition. If you can get at them, you can break down their attack and break at speed and move through and play through that midfield. Even if you're not doing that at speed, even if you can just find those passes, which I think makes Martin Zubimendi quite integral to Arsenal in terms of this game, to split the lines there, they can be got at. And that defence is also relatively weak. I think they've really strengthened it with the arrival of Mark Gehi, but of course he is unavailable. And I think their fullbacks can be got at as well. And they're not as physical a side as they have been in the past. And with this move to the league being more and more physical, I think that's going to be a real area where Arsenal can thrive against them. We saw it in the second half at the Emirates, for instance, about how effectively we can do that, and it forced Manchester City in a position where they drop deep. I don't think they're going to drop as deep at Wembley, and the pitch being that much bigger, will make that a much harder option for them to do. But I think that's an area where Arsenal will really need to focus, because it is an area of concern for City. We saw Real Madrid do it really effectively in the Champions League. I would expect them to go with Rodri, and I don't think they will play both Reinders and Cherki. I think for them playing Cherki, although they lose something physically and they lose something defensively, I think he is a good enough player to hurt Arsenal going the other way when Arsenal commit men forward. And I think we will be relatively conservative going forward. He's a man that can unlock something. And even if we are back into our sort of rest formation, nice, solid, tight banks of four, we all know how we can do that really effectively. He is someone that can unlock the door. And they will be relatively well rested, of course, as well. They realised relatively early into the second half that they weren't going to get the game over the line against Real Madrid, and therefore they bought players like Rodri and Haaland off. Silva, of course, got a longer rest after his misdemeanor on the line, so they will come in relatively well rested. But as I say, the form guide not really with them. From an Arsenal perspective, we know Moreno is obviously out, but Timber and Odegaard are the doubt. I can't see a world in which Martin Odegaard starts, and I don't think he should start. I think Eze is in good form, and I think there is a question about whether you start Havertz and Gyökeres as well. That is a decision that I'll come on to in a minute. But I think Jurrien Timber is the man you take the gamble on if there is a risk. There is Doku and Semenyo as probable left wing starters. I think they both actually start, one on the right, one on the left. And Timber is one of, if not the best one-on-one defender in the league. You lose a little bit going forward compared to, say, Ben White. And I thought Ben White played really, really well against Leverkusen on Tuesday. But I think there is that danger in those wide areas from City players. And therefore, I think Jurrien Timber is a man that sort of plays there. The other side as well is interesting, because I think if you go with White, then it's definitely Nketiah that plays there. There is, of course, an option to play Mascara. It's more defensively solid, and you can see the attraction to that. But I would go Ben White personally, even if it's for 60 minutes if Jurrien Timber isn't fully fit. But if you go Ben White, But I think he's definitely got to be in Cappy, as I say. He's in great form. But Calafiori played very well as well against Everton of the week. And he gives you more of an attacking outlet. And I think that'll be interesting in a world where you're in Timber plays. Do you go two very solid fullbacks, or do you go for one more attack-minded player there? So I think there's decisions there, as well as the goalkeeper. I spoke about that in the week. I mean, for me, it's got to be David Raya. I think you pick your best side, and he's your best goalkeeper. But I'm not shocked to see if it's Kepa in goal tomorrow. I think it'll be Trafford at the other end. But I wonder if at the back of both Guardiola and Arteta's mind is, well, what happens if the other one goes for their first choice goalkeeper and I don't, and it costs us the game? So I think there will be that, but I expect it will be Kepa. And I understand why. He's been the keeper all the way through, but I'm not sure that would be the right call. That said, we've seen Mikel Arteta be very ruthless with players before, and that gives me some hope that it will be David Raya. And that's not to criticise Kepa, by the way. I just think Raya is the better goalkeeper. We know it'll be Zubimendi as we move into midfield alongside Rice, and I think Zubimendi could be key here. He also came off in the week to get a bit of a rest. I think his pass-splitting line, as I talked about, that sort of weak area of Manchester City could be really crucial. Saka on the right, I think he's been fairly decent last two games. I know there was a lot of criticism about his performance against Everton. I thought that was overdone. I actually thought he wasn't at his top levels, but I thought he was okay. And I think Trossard will probably start on the left. And I understand why. He played really well against Leverkusen, deserved a goal, and I think he'd be fired up for having not scored. But the pitch is quite wide. Could Martinelli be the man to exploit that space and just get in behind those fullbacks in transition? Again, I think it will depend on how Arteta plays. I think Trossard is the safer option and probably the better option. But it is something to think about. Again, as I say, you'd expect Arsenal to sit deeper and look to counter on that City to exploit that transition I keep talking about. Martinelli is a useful man there. And then I think it's your 10 and striker to choose from. For me, Victor Gyökeres should start this game, but I'm not, again, shocked if it's Havertz because of that ability to link play and exploit that weakness in the middle of the park. I can understand that, but I'd like to see them both start together. That would be harsh on Eze, who I think has been fantastic in the last couple of weeks. Probably his best back-to-back games against Everton and Leverkusen. And he's got such a good record at Wembley. I expect Eze to start, and I think it will be a choice between Gyökeres and Havertz. But I really like the idea of those two, the power, the pace, the movement of Gyökeres coupled with coupled with Gyökeres' ability to get in channels. I think could be really, really interesting there, and make for a really fluid front four there with Saka and probably Trossard. So I think they're the key selection ones going there, and I think the side will be Kepa, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Hincapié, Rice, Zubimendi. I think it will be Eze, Trossard, Saka, and Havertz. But as I say, I would make a couple of changes there where I would go. I would go for Hazard up front with Gyökeres in that one, and I would go David Raya in goal. As I say, I think it's going to be an intense game. I think it's going to be a difficult game for both sides. Both going to not want to lose this one, and therefore I think we could be in for a cagey afternoon. First goal is going to be crucial. Gabriel and Silva are going to have to watch Haaland as usual because he is, a danger man despite him having a difficult season, which I think is also related to the lack of space we're seeing in the Premier League this season compared to in other seasons. I'd love to say it's going to be an Arsenal win. I really hope so, but I do have a horrible feeling it's going to be a City win. It's just the gut feeling. They're on terrible form, not 1 in 5. We've been winning quite a lot lately. I just have a horrible feeling the football gods are going to punish us. I think it's going to be City 2, Arsenal 1, but boy, oh boy, do I hope I'm wrong. As always, let me know your lineup and your score predictions in the comments below, and I will speak to you soon. Have a good one.